We should announce my candidacy for governor right here.
Governor right now.
When she run again, a couple more years.
Yeah, she's got like 2 years left. Alexa, open Law and Disorder podcast.
Welcome to Law and Disorder. Now playing The Enabler.
The
Are you
Enabler?
enabling your addict?
Oh,
Pretty appropriate.
Law and Disorder, the podcast.
Hey,
that gets
Kim.
real with addiction, recovery, and
dude, there ain't
everything
no
in between.
way you're gonna beat
Here
my
the
ass in basketball.
360 degrees with your hosts Tim,
Are we
Disorder,
talking
and Joe.
real basketball or are we talking
Yes,
Well,
we
NBA Live?
specialize
NBA
in
Live, you got a
every
little bit of a
field
jump
related
start,
to
but I
what
will
you
catch up.
just tuned in. Welcome to Law
Loading.
and Disorder, and remember,
You know what I'm saying?
recovery is possible.
I know what you're
Tim and
saying.
Joe, it's all yours.
Yeah. Let's tag some people. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna tag. Hey, Katrina.
Welcome to Law and Disorder. I'm Tim.
And I'm Joe. Hey.
Today,
We're still Tim.
We
It's
could
still
just let
Joe.
that play.
topic that,
Yeah. Why not?
well, all of
Alexa.
it will be
Repeat. As we're getting started, tag some people.
Law and Disorder, the podcast that gets real with addiction, recovery, and everything in between. Here, the 360 degrees with your hosts Tim,
Hey, Marie.
Disorder, and Joe, Law, with guest speakers specializing in every field related to why you just tuned in. Welcome to Law and Disorder, and remember, recovery is possible. Tim and Joe,
Possible.
it's all yours.
While we're messing around, I'm gonna put on here, on over here.
welcome to Law and Disorder. I'm Tim.
And I'm Joe.
Today's episode is about a topic
Yeah.
that many,
All right. Let's see what we got.
All right.
Let's get some tags going.
Wish I could.
I'm just gonna tag some people. Hey, Lisa.
Hi, Lisa.
She won't let me. Hey, Kelly.
Hi, Katrina.
Katrina.
Hi, Kelly.
We're tagging people. We are tagging people. Bam. Tagging. Boom. Just tag. Yeah, Earl. Where's Earl?
Where's Earl at? Where's Alex?
Earl's always here. I bet you Earl's out buying non-essential items.
Probably. She has no business doing, especially when we're live streaming.
I know. It's amazing. Everybody tag. Share it. Do a watch party. Well. Boom. Well. Boom. Just tagging people. Hey, Ann, how's it going? trying to. So here's what we're going to do. I am going to start. Bam. All right. Got a few more minutes.
Meditating.
Are you meditating?
Yeah. Getting ready.
It's getting ready. Must be a
Nope.
good show.
Joe Davis is watching with me.
Oh, yeah. It's because I started a watch party.
Well, we're looking well.
We're looking well.
You're looking pretty well yourself, Katrina.
Mm.
With the camera Joe has, we see all of you.
We see all of you.
Yeah.
Like
so.
all of you. See, we could really get funky. Like, while we're waiting, we could really like play around quite a bit.
How so?
Well, let me show you. Technology is a wonderful thing.
Really? You think so? Oh,
Yeah.
It scares me.
No, it shouldn't scare
Until
you.
I can become a cyborg.
It
I
shouldn't
don't know.
scare you. Shouldn't scare you. So watch this. We're gonna go boom.
Whoa.
Whoa. Oh.
Look at me. I'm everywhere.
You're everywhere. But
It's
I'm
my
gone.
show.
But I'm gone.
Welcome to the Disorder Show. Disorder squared. Disorder and disorder. Welcome
Welcome.
to the Disorder Show.
We're just having a little camera fun.
Hi, Aaron. Welcome to the Disorder Show
Look at
and
that.
Disorder.
2 Tims.
Oh, I like
no.
that. Oh.
Whoa. No, we don't do that.
What?
Dude, we don't
People
want to
love
scare
it.
them away,
No, people
man.
like that. I got a bunch of messages here.
You're just showing off your...
Mm-mm. No, I got.
I gotta,
Hey,
I
Rachel
gotta-
Joe.
I gotta unplug you.
Hey, Allison.
I gotta unplug you because you're getting...
Is my head getting big?
Yeah.
It looked to me like
It
my
was
head
getting
kinda
big. It was getting big.
Yeah,
It was getting
it was
big.
bound to happen.
You're in your jammies, Kim. So am I. Underneath. That makes any sense.
He had to just put them on. He wasn't wearing anything waist
No.
out a minute ago. And he put his jammies on. I'm grateful.
I just showed up, ready to rock and roll. All right, we got about 2 more minutes. Everybody, tag people.
2 more minutes. It's 120 seconds. Give
Roughly.
or take
Roughly.
20 seconds.
Oh, Deborah, you made it just in time. We haven't started yet. We're tagging people. We got about another minute.
It's plenty of time.
Got to tag.
Tag.
Tag. And do them watch parties, too.
Oh, those are effective. Hi, Deborah.
Oh, Ann says she saw your nose hairs, man.
Well, getting to that point.
Those are quarantine nose hairs.
Between my quarantine nose hairs and my just regular eyebrows, which
Yeah.
lady friends always want to pluck out of my head.
Yeah.
You're like, let me just get a tweezer. I'll just.
So I got a haircut.
I don't know. You did.
Yeah.
All of them. Looks like
Most of them.
Yeah.
Most of them.
shiny. You're shiny.
Deborah, the topic is going to be. Oops, let me get you back up.
Joe's haircut.
My haircut, my quarantine haircut. No, today's topic is going to be about what do you do when you suspect or know that your kid is using drugs or alcohol.
It's a good topic.
It's a very good topic. So we're just going to boom, get rid of that. Boom.
Hey, Megan.
Hey, Megan. Boom. So, we can get started, I think, huh?
I think so.
You think so?
Yeah.
Alrighty. So, while we're getting those last bit of people in here. Yeah, we just kind of talked about it today. We're going to talk about what to do if you find out your kid is using drugs or alcohol. A lot of people respond instantly with anger, disappointment, that kind of thing.
Yep.
Um,
I remember that.
yeah. So I think what you have to do, like initially, is take a step back, right? Kind of, you've got to evaluate how you're going to approach it. You have to have, like, if you have a spouse or a partner, you kind of have to be on the same page, the same team. But yeah, you have to take a step back. You can't just like initially just react to it. I don't think that's a good. You're going to say something. You're going to that's going to create more tension. Maybe your child won't even open up at that point. They'll just, it's all negative. It's going to be
right. You're going to create a situation where the child is just 110% defensive.
Yeah.
Right? You're not going to get any honest information, likely. And if you are lucky to get some, despite the nature of the conversation, the nature of that conversation is going to be kind of hostile.
And they're just going to button right up, and that's going to be the end of it. You're not going to get very far.
Nah, probably not.
No. So ultimately, you want to first talk to your spouse, partner, or whoever's going to be engaging that conversation with you and following up with it. Hey, Georgia.
Hi, Georgia.
And some of the things you want to cover with your spouse, or we'll just say the second half, that's what we're going to call it, okay? It could be 2-3 people, it could be one, could be whatever. You got to remind yourself it's not your fault, right?
Right.
Kids do the damnedest things, we always say. The peer pressure comes into play. Adolescents, they start to think they know everything. We've all been there, right? And we find out real quick, eventually, well, I should say eventually, that we don't know everything. But at that time, they seem to know everything, right?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. So, yeah, you're going to have to also agree on how you want to approach it. You can't approach a single problem with 2 different approaches. That's not going to work. You're going to be confusing your son or daughter, and that's just going to create the insecurity type thing where they're going to be like, okay, I can tap dance through this, no problem, right? If there's weakness, there's a hole.
Oh, you'd be like Barry Sanders looking for the holes in the line, gonna run right through it, right?
Yeah.
And in some families, some parents, you have holes that trucks could go through, right? So it really does take a collaborative effort. You talked about your spouse or your significant other.
Second half,
but this is the thing. The hardest, I think, dynamic will come down to when you're co-parenting with someone who you're no longer in a relationship with, because that always highlights the differences in philosophies. Sometimes that's why you're not together, right? Like you weren't able to find enough in common, right? You didn't look at things the same way.
Yeah, that's where that communication is vital.
It's and not just the communication, but like the willingness to like go into that. You gotta leave your past behind and to go into that particular battle with like a kind of like a clean slate and desire and a willingness to do whatever it takes, right? Not to go in with your prejudices and preconceived notions and push those on your second half, but to be open-minded for sure.
Yes, absolutely. That's a difficult hurdle in itself. But the child needs to see that both sides both halves are on the same page,
right? And
they're consistent, and basically they have a plan, and it's not going to be altered by miscommunication.
And usually in the beginning, both sides really aren't on the same page, and so the child sees that and is going to. There's usually a process of one parent trying to do it their way, and they find out that doesn't work, that eventually you have to have that support, you have to have that cohesion.
And that's not just with this topic, but really with anything.
Parenting, right?
Yes,
in general.
Absolutely.
In general. But man, the addict really like identifies the inconsistencies and exploits them quick. Like they know who to go to for money, they know who to go to for a ride, they know who to say or what to say in order to manipulate this situation or that. They know when mom goes to work so that they can be alone with dad.
They acquire those skills.
They're
from
giving
a
lot
age.
of thought to the divide and conquer approach in order to maintain their addiction.
Right. And I think it's very important that you have to come from an angle where it's not anger. It's not, we talked about that already, but you have to come from an angle where you understand and you care, right? But you also have to be firm on, okay, this is not allowed and these are the consequences. So establishing that whole process, it's not going to be like you find out and then you call up the second half and say, our kid's using drugs. And then we got to talk to them. Right? You got to sit down together first. And first of all, get over the initial shock, right? It's not anything any parent wants to hear.
Right.
And then you have also the people that say, not my child, right?
Not my child.
Yes, your child. And the reality sets in and they have to overcome that. So very important you take a step back. Be prepared to be a hypocrite. I'm going to let Tim talk about this one.
Well, I'm the hypocrite
I
expert.
didn't say that. But it revolves around the fact that they will say, well, didn't you do this?
Yeah, I know where you're going with
Yeah.
it. Yeah. So like what happens is you be prepared to be a hypocrite if that's necessary, because what's going to happen is if your child knows about your past use or even current use, like, hey, dad, you drink on the weekends, you know, you got to be ready to say to own that, and don't let that rattle you. It doesn't change your message, and it doesn't change the focus of the problem that needs to be addressed, right? So yeah, when I was younger, I did struggle with substance abuse, but also right now I own a house and 2 cars, and I put a roof over your head, and I pay for every meal you eat, and I'm not the focus today. Maybe down the line you and I can talk a little bit more about those sorts of things, but for today we need to talk about the young person who's chemically addicted to something and really has no way out of this without intervention.
Right. And be prepared, even as a smoker, they'll throw that at you. You smoke. Well, that's when you kind of have to say, okay, yeah, smoking is not healthy, but I'm an adult and I can make that choice and it's legal. Right. And don't say that it's a good thing or defend yourself, because there are negatives, and I think every smoker knows that. But you have to own up to that as well, because you're trying to create that line of communication that's built off of honesty.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to make sure that's initiated.
Mm-hmm. And again, so much of addiction, we measure where one is at in it by the manageability of their life. What do you have going on? Are you getting fired from your jobs? Are you just laying on the couch all day playing Xbox? What's your life look like, right? And if you have the means to provide for a child, you're doing something right, and that's something to point to, that you're doing your best to provide for them. So
Mm-hmm.
it's a different ball game.
Yeah, and Katrina, that's that's a good statement, and something that's plays out very positive in this kind of situation, where if someone's in recovery, or the kids know that they used to, use drugs or alcohol, they throw that at you. But if it's something you are open about and tell them, okay, I don't want you to learn the same lessons the way I did. I want you to learn from my mistakes so you don't have to go through that, right? And I think that makes a lot more sense. So, is Amber here?
Wait a minute. How many craws are here?
I don't know.
It's a craw.
It's a craw. It's a craw. So, yeah. So your next thing, once you have talked to your second half, other half, however you want to classify it, and again, that can be grandparents, whoever's going to be involved in this conversation, the approach, and carry out the decision on how that's going to be curved. You're going to need evidence, right? You can't just go with an empty hand and say, I know you're doing drugs, right? Even though you suspect it, you have to be prepared for this conversation, because the last thing you want to do is come with empty, you can't just approach it and be like, I don't have any evidence, but yeah, because they're going to say, how do you know? Right?
Or no, I don't.
Yeah. And then what?
No, I don't.
And then
I
what?
don't smoke weed.
Right.
I don't. I was in a car.
Yeah.
My friends do.
Yeah.
Right?
Excuses.
Yeah.
And diversion.
Right.
And if you don't have hard evidence, guess what?
It's going to be a harder topic to tackle with them.
Well, I think the conversation's over at that point, because you really don't have, it's difficult. So if you build up that evidence, and evidence can be something simple as your grades have dropped. You're sleeping in all the time now. You're not carrying your weight around the house.
You're moodier.
You're moody. Exactly. Those type of things.
You're hanging out with different people now.
Right. So as a parent, you kind of hesitate to go through your kids' rooms and belongings. But sometimes
Not my mom.
no, but
Favorite pastime, bro.
really,
Oh, she was like, she's Snoop Dogg.
Snoop Dogg, Snoop Doggy Dog.
My bedroom was like her personal guest room. She was in there all the time. I'm talking about like when I was younger, but even when I was older, if I stepped away, she had no problem.
So did you just like shizzle my dizzle moms or what?
I just had to roll with it, man.
Just gotta roll with it. And that's something you got to make clear. But there's a difference between helicopter parents and parents looking out for their children.
You're right.
And I think once you establish that there's a problem or a potential problem, I think that gives you every right to do some snooping, right? Some Snoop Doggy
She
Dogging.
didn't, to my knowledge, start doing it till I was going in and out of the house to get bags of weed to sell.
Right.
You know?
So she was on
So my
to you.
bedroom became a high traffic area in the house. She
Yeah.
pretty much didn't pay any attention. So
Right. And that's where you can start looking for evidence.
like in my comic box with all my comics. That's a good place.
Okay, so there we go. We got one, the comic box, right? Some
Yes,
of the
sir.
other ones are like smaller boxes, like jewelry boxes, under the bed, between the mattresses, desk drawers tucked between clothes. Depending on what it is, they'll throw it in a book. Sometimes even they'll be even as slick as putting it in like over-the-counter drug pill bottles.
Sure.
Empty candy bags and whatnot, or half empty. But yeah, you have to look. They'll put it in the dirt from the plants. That's a common one.
Oh, wow. Haven't
Yeah,
heard that
oh,
one.
yeah,
That's
yeah.
clever.
Yeah.
That's a good one. All the other ones, I was like, you can see through that. That's a good one.
No, so when I worked in the forensics, funny story on
You're
this.
going to have to kill the house plant, Mom, in order to
Find my
Yep.
yeah. So when I worked in the forensics, we'd have the canines come through, and in the lobby we had plants, and of course we'll call them patients would come out and they would clean, just like in a jail setting, and those canines would go nuts on them plants every time. They just ripped the dirt to shreds, like. So that was common. I mean, yeah. So you have to remain calm. We talked about that. You can't go in angry, even though you are angry. You can't go in disappointed, even though you are disappointed.
You got
So
good question.
What's
about,
that?
I think that one right there from Deborah.
okay, we're gonna hit a question real quick. I think the drug test thing, I would say initially I would wait for proof. And we're going to get to that whole point as far as the plan of attack. And once you have the child admitting there's a problem, and we're getting to where you have to establish that first, which is a major hurdle. But Deborah,
I want to say right quick, Deborah, in a short answer, yes, I would. I wouldn't have any problem dropping my son and testing him if I were concerned. I think I'd be a lot more direct than most parents, coming where I'm coming from and feeling like I can just see right through any kind of addict behavior. So I would do it in a minute. Every family's a little bit different as far as like how far you want to extend the trust and how much proof you want to have before you make that move. But as a rule, do I see like a problem with it philosophically? No. I think there's definitely a time and place to do that. And me personally, I'd be quick to do it.
yeah. So, and we'll get to that a little more in detail. Hey, Lynn, glad you make it.
Hey, Lynn.
But yeah, you don't want to go in too emotional because what that's going to do is it's going to shut them down. They're going to have to go to the defense tactics right away.
Mm-hmm.
And we want to avoid that, right? We want to have an honest, open conversation. And one thing you don't want to do too is like stand above them. You want to kind of eliminate that authority positioning.
Yeah.
So you're level so they feel like they can talk to you. Like if I'm standing over somebody, it automatically projects that okay, they're either in trouble or they have to deal with someone that's above them. We don't want that.
Mm-mm.
So so those are some of the things you have to watch for. So let's say it does get heated, right? What would you suggest, Tim, at that point when it gets heated? Like
Confrontational between
just like it goes into a screaming match. Like,
if we're talking about a shouting match, you're already losing if you're shouting. Like you need to have your composure and realize that the person who is in addiction and in denial will not. They need to be taking their cues from you. You don't need to take your cues from them. So even when they go way up here, you got to be prepared to be like calm and chill and rational to the point. And when it starts to feel like you can't help but to hit the roof, that's probably the time to walk away and revisit it a little bit later.
Hey, Rhonda.
Help us, Rhonda.
So piggybacking off of that, that's definitely something you have to do. You have to maintain your composure, as Tim just said. You cannot allow yourself to fall victim to a natural defense mechanism, right? So you need to keep your focus on the goal that you are trying to accomplish, which is basically let them know there is a problem and whatnot. You're going to approach it as a team, and we'll get to that in a second. But Kelly brings up an interesting point, which goes along with the evidence. You have to be sure, because if you're wrong, trust is broken, and that is for sure.
I agree, but I'll say this: at least you're erring on the side of protecting your child. You can always backtrack and be like, "I was wrong,"
or you could transition.
I'm sorry, but in my mind, your life was at stake, and that's why I did what I had to do. So it's not like you were like trying to catch them staying up past their bedtime or getting onto some website they shouldn't get on. I think those situations that they're going to survive for sure.
Yeah,
we need to give young people more trust and autonomy, because we go through different stages in life, and we just got to let our kids do the same thing that we did. But when their life is on the line, I think that calls for a different set of rules. And if you do have to apologize for guessing wrong, at least you're able to say, like, I just protect you, and I'm sorry.
And if you approach it at a very, like we said, no emotions, you keep it kind of calm, you can almost divert that. Like, if you don't have any evidence and you're approaching it, you could turn it into, I just wanted to have a talk with you so you're aware of the dangers and blah, blah, blah. You can go from there with that. So there's ways to roll with things where you don't have to necessarily create unnecessary conflicts.
Oh, for sure.
Yeah. So
that's a neat sound effect. I'm glad you brought that to our podcast.
Yeah,
that had been missing in some.
Didn't even have to hit a button.
No.
Yeah. So that's a very good point, Lynn. I'm gonna throw you back up there real quick. People that are in recovery, they obviously know the signs, the tricks of the trade better than people who haven't been through that. That's definitely key. And we had talked about that right before you got here, Lynn, is how we can use those.
That's a very useful, like that ability that I have was hard earned, but I do have it if I need it for my family, so I will make use of it. It's one of the ways that you take the destruction you're responsible for in your addiction and you turn it into something positive, and just taking what you know and applying it pretty much anywhere in life is a good thing to do,
Absolutely.
Hopefully in this situation you won't have to, but if you do, apply what you know.
So then when you are setting your goals prior to the approach with your other half, as we call it, I think it's very important to set some sort of like goal. Like, first would be obviously to have the talk and keep it civil, gain the communication, get that opened up. And then from there, I think it's very important to discuss, like, how are we going to fix this, right?
Mm-hmm.
How are we going to get this back on track? And that's a tricky one, because a lot of people who haven't dealt with it have high expectations.
Sure.
Like, we're going to stop from today to tomorrow and we're done.
This is over.
Yes.
Right. And I think just backtracking a little bit, but when you talk about going into that conversation, remember, it's not like one you've ever had before. Don't treat this like you found out they got an F in a class, right? Like, that's really upsetting and all that. But this is in a whole different category. So where, you might be angry about that F, and even angrier to learn about some alcoholism or what have you. Even so, you need to take this situation and maintain your composure and just like understand it's a whole different beast. Don't go in there with like anger and condemnation and judgment, or it's going to be probably game over from the jump.
Right, and you want to avoid that at all.
We want to get
costs.
to the place that we're about to discuss.
Yes.
What to do about it, how to handle it.
So you have to keep in mind that those expectations have to be set relatively low, because you're building off a trust from a problem, right? And that's a difficult jump. That's a hard accomplishment to get done. But once that's rolling somewhat, and you're gonna be able to do that depending on how you approach it. You have to keep in mind that your child is not going to immediately admit that they have a problem. More times than not, they're just going to deflect. They're going to use the excuses like Tim brought up earlier. It wasn't me. I was in the car. They lit up and I told them I wanted out. That type of, you'll hear that stuff, right? Mm-hmm. And you have to get through that, but you have to expect it, right? So you have to be prepared to deal with it. And you have to do, just like in recovery, those small steps. Boom, 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 right? So if you set that way too high, once they admit to having a problem, then you're scaring them right off.
Right, totally, yeah. And if we had said we're only going to do a podcast when we have good equipment and a nice studio, we might not ever got here.
Probably
right?
not.
Yeah.
No,
So
we learned as we went.
We just started threw ourselves into it, right? And just our expectations, we kept manageable and just kept hoping for the best, and we continue to do that.
Right.
And it's a weird parallel, I guess, building a podcast versus helping your child with addiction. But yeah, you got to go into it with realistic expectations, definitely.
So this is an interesting point. So a lot of people think you should not be friends with your kids, that you are a parent. I feel different about that. I make my kids my friends, and they can come to me with anything and everything. Lynn, that is very interesting. I like to find that middle of the road, personally. You have to have that friendship, I think, is very important. Because there is a difference between a friendship and parenting, like definitely.
Mm-hmm. And I think it can be a really difficult line for some people to walk. Before I ever had a child, I spent the better part of 10 years working with children, difficult children. So I feel like I was a little bit more prepared to try to straddle that, because those kids, I had to lean on my relationship more than anything else, right? All the consequences, the timeouts, the taking your video game privileges away type stuff, those were useful sometimes, but they were never, they paled in comparison to just my one-on-one relationship.
The rapport.
Right, my rapport, what that would accomplish with them. So I actually do kind of consider myself to be on that friend level with my son, but I have no problem stepping outside of that and bringing the pain.
Yep. And that's where you have to find it, and we'll get, I'm going to pull up Lynn's first here real quick. Still be a parent. Absolutely. You, at the end of the day, that has to be a priority. But you know, that builds that trust, and that rapport is so valuable, especially when you're dealing with negative things, right? So Kelly says, my son had an alcohol problem before drugs, but when it got bad, I sought counseling for myself, and my second half, it helped so much. Even though we lost him, it helps to know we tried to help and understand. So that's very, very valuable, because people don't realize that, parents don't realize that there is counseling out there for these situations, right? There's hotlines where you can call, they will guide you through it. There's all kinds of websites available where you can actually research that, and then, you know, obviously it's going to be situational. Some kids are going to be more difficult to approach than others.
Some are going to have established worse problems than others.
And it's going to, exactly.
So there's going to be a lot of variables with this whole process, for sure.
Yeah. Katrina, I failed as a parent, can only be a friend parent. Well, I think the word parent is attached to friend. So I would assume you have done a great job now.
Yeah, I think you do. There are some of us who kind of box ourselves in to having to do things differently because we get lost in addiction and we don't do the things we should be doing as parents. So when we finally sober up and get clean and we're ready, and thank God for that when it comes, unfortunately, sometimes we have to be honest about the fact that, like, never going to be the traditional mom, never going to be the traditional father. I already cashed that whole idea in when I, with my years of using. But that doesn't mean you can't be one of the most important and influential people in your child's life.
Exactly.
You can be the most honest person in your child's life, and that's going to help you regain and rebuild that relationship. And thank you for your honesty, Katrina.
Yeah, see, Deborah, that's what we were talking about as far as when you are in recovery, and it's so much easier to approach that at an early age as far as education and those heart-to-heart talks about things because kids know a lot more and they see a lot more than what we actually realize.
Yeah.
So they're no dummies to what's going on, even though sometimes we think they are.
My kid was catching on young, right? By 5 o'clock or 5 years old, he was going to 12-step meetings with me.
Yeah.
And he was sitting in there a lot of times playing video games, but there's enough brain power in there for him to sort of still absorb different things. And he was pretty hip to my nonsense by the time he got to be about 7 or 8.
So Lynn says she doesn't want to be a traditional mom. Well, I'm in there with you because I don't think I'm a traditional dad.
I don't want to be a mom at all. That sounds horrible to me.
You've always said you wanted to breastfeed.
That's different, though.
Yeah. So when you get to the point where you have to establish a plan, we kind of started into that where you have to be realistic. You have to have lower expectations than what you're going to want to. Mm-hmm. Your heart's going to tell you differently.
Yeah.
But you have to set those a little bit lower than what you are thinking because that'll be a deterrent, as we mentioned before. So as you're going along and you're establishing these this process and how we're going to get back to where we need to be with your child, you have to set rules and there has to be consequences. But here's the key to those, right? Don't set up any kind of rules or consequences that you cannot carry out.
Right. Yeah,
you agree?
Totally. Right. Oh, yeah. So at my job, prior directors had a lot of rules. They were posted on the wall. So it said, if you do this, I'll do this. If you do this, here's what happens. And I really didn't like that. That's not my style. I feel by doing that, I just box myself in and take away my ability to use discretion and treat each situation as its own entity. So I do think it's good to give our kids some kind of expectation for what could happen if they continue to make the mistakes they're making, but just be careful about it. Just be aware that if you start throwing things out there like rules and what happens when they break those rules, you better be prepared to follow them up or you're going to be doing more harm than good. You really have to be. This is a time for consistency and structure. That's something that's usually missing in an addict's life in a big way. So again, don't take your cues from the addict. You need to they need to be taking them from you. They need to be learning what structure looks like. And
exactly,
it's something that's not doesn't come natural to everybody, but It can be done. But it's easy to accomplish, though. You can do it.
You can definitely do it. So we're gonna throw a comment up here. Within our family, struggling at different points of time, we're always honest and explain what's happening with loved ones and we're struggling sometimes. Yes, honesty can always be a double-sworded edge, but for the greater good, that's the only way to get where you need to be. Whether your child is using and doesn't want to admit it, I think that's the biggest hurdle to get over initially. And it's, again, from the approach. And once you get through that point, it's so important to, just as Tim was saying, those rules and consequences. You have to be 1,000% sure that you can carry those out. If not, it's an invitation for them to do whatever they want because you are weaker than they are at that point.
Yes, sir.
Can you agree?
I do.
Awesome. And then you have to be on the same page, right? You just can't say, one side can't say, if this happens, this is going to be the consequence, right? You both have to be on the same page.
Yeah, and that brings up something that I didn't even think about before we started the show, but it's out there. I can only imagine how complicated this all gets when your, what do we call them, the second half is also struggling with substance abuse. How do you work with that person?
I think you got to eliminate that at that point.
At that point, you go on your own?
Yes, I believe you. Actually, not necessarily on your own. I think you need to go get counseling because you're dealing with it from multiple angles. And being alone in a situation like that, you're going to struggle.
Oh, yeah.
You can be the strongest, smartest person in the world, but you are going to struggle with that one because you don't have anybody to vent to talk to actually have a
bounce ideas.
Process things.
Yeah.
So talk to my grandbabies. Yes. That goes along with starting with educating them young. Tim and I, we went to a local high school to speak. And I think how we approached that was basically kind of what we just said here as you're approaching your own child was we didn't go in and be like, I'm the deputy and you don't do drugs. And he didn't go in and be like, I'm the addict. You shouldn't
Let me
drugs.
sell you drugs.
Yeah. But
I'll be in the parking lot afterwards.
Yeah. So we went in and we related in two different angles. Like I went in with my hobby, which was interesting for them. They wanted to know more.
Yeah, definitely humanize law enforcement for them a little bit.
Yeah.
Anybody who dabbles in that drug world is going to see law enforcement as kind of the enemy, usually, right?
Absolutely.
It's a cat and mouse game.
Well, and that stems from the war on drugs, and you get caught, you're going to get thrown in jail.
So those kids in there who were holding pens, dabs, wax, whatever, in their pockets and knew it, were probably looking more at him than they were me, kind of bug-eyed. But then you were able to just show a human side to yourself and a human side to law enforcement and help them to see that things are changing.
Right. And then you came in with a different approach than what they're used to. You related to them with the Xbox thing and then actually interacted with them by calling to see if you had to drop that day and put on speakerphone. And that's when I think they realized, wait a minute, like the consequences for this are like ridiculous. Like I'm gonna have to call every day.
Yeah.
And then, you played it for them in speakerphone and they were all anxious. They're all like,
yeah, it was awesome.
Yeah.
I can't wait to do it again.
But I think that's how you got to approach it. You got to get them involved in the conversation.
Right. And that's so you gotta bring something new to the table that they haven't heard or seen before, or if they have heard it and seen it, you got to find a way to say it differently so that it catches their attention.
Okay, so Kelly says, when you see your child hurting, you can be the strongest person, but this will test your strength to the max. Get a second half that understands what you're doing through or a very good listener. That is a very good point because we all know there's different scenarios. Like they always say opposites attract. They say, you have one parent that's usually deals with the disciplinary stuff. The other one deals with, maybe other things. So if that's not compatible and you're not going to, you ahead of time, you're not going to reach that goal with your other half, then and I know Kelly's not saying divorce your partner or whatever. She's just saying look for someone else to support you in this venture, right? Not to say that person's a bad person, but there's a lot of different scenarios where there's step parents involved, personality conflicts, or just that adolescent hormone stuff going all crazy. Mm-hmm. They may favor one parent over the next, and it's usually a sign of weakness, but not always. But yeah, you have to make sure that your other half is on the same page and has the ability to carry out what you both decide, right?
Absolutely, yeah. We all need help. The addict needs help, and the people trying to help the addict need help. And by the
So-
way, hi Natalie.
Natalie jumped in.
Natalie woke up.
Oh god. So you definitely need your person when trying to handle that. And two best friends that help me keep my head above water. Absolutely. And that's again that piggybacks off what Kelly just said. You doesn't necessarily have to be your spouse, right? It can be a good friend, it can be a grandma, a grandparent, whatever. Just make sure that you're on the same page and support each other. And don't ever forget there is counseling out there for this specific reason.
Yeah, there's I'm blanking on the name of the support group that's like Al-Anon, right?
Yeah.
That's just an example. There's a lot out there for people who are struggling on the other side of addiction, struggling because it's brought into their lives by a loved one, not because they themselves are dependent on anything. So there are a lot of resources for sure. And if you're looking for some, hit us up after the show and we'll try to point you in the right direction.
Absolutely. So when you're talking to them, there's so many different things that you have to be aware of, right? Don't try to approach them if they come home high and you know it, right? That would be a really bad timing thing on your part, right? So you want to make sure that they're sober. You want to make sure that they're like, you just have to be aware of that. Like if you approach someone as they're coming home from just doing drugs or drinking or whatever, they're already expecting to have to defend that if caught, right?
Mm-hmm.
So just be aware of that. That could be a big mistake, big timing mistake.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, definitely. I would say make sure, and they might never be 100% sober because of the problem that they have. They might be using all the time if they're hooked on opiates, for example. So it's hard for us to say when the time will be right, but yeah, you definitely don't want to talk to them when they're just in the ozone, right? Like you look for an opportunity where they seem to be a little bit more clear-minded and level-headed and receptive to talking. If you just thrust it upon them, you're probably not going to have much success.
And a few other things that we want to hit on here real quick would be, so obviously if you're going to throw something at someone and they're going to take it as an insult, even though they may be guilty, but then it's almost like a natural human instinct to deflect that in the way of some sort of insult or criticism going towards the parent. You have to expect that. So be prepared for that. Don't get upset. Talk about it. Like, okay, that's fair. And again, we hit it on the smoke, like the smoking cigarette part. Just make sure that you don't use, like, your defense on that should be to open a conversation. It shouldn't be to justify anything. It shouldn't be to justify their point for sure. But yeah, you have to be really careful of that. And the easiest way to accomplish all of this is put yourself in their shoes, right? How would you want to be approached?
Yeah. Yeah, there's really no, like, it's difficult to think of times in life where the golden rule should be discarded, right? Like somebody like punches your spouse, you can probably throw the golden rule out the window for a minute.
Right.
But just because someone in your life has a substance abuse problem doesn't mean that the golden rule no longer applies. You still want to treat them with compassion and understanding for sure. But of course, fairness and healthy boundaries for you. So, and that's something that's a lot at first. It's hard at first to put that Rubik's Cube together, but with time, you'll be able to. With time and support, you'll be able to even faster.
So Lisa says you have to know their state of mind, right? So when it's defensive, I mean, we all know teenagers, they're very moody. They're very, the hormones, they have all that going on. So pick and choose your approach time wisely. But also, I think what's very important is yourself as well. Like, make sure it's a good time for you. Don't come home from work all stressed out and try to tackle this because it's probably not going to go well.
I agree. do it on your terms to the best of your ability. That's just being smart.
So, sorry so late. Earl, what's up, Earl?
Should we accept his apology?
I don't know. I think there's a bunch of people who want to kick you out, Earl, but we're not going to do that.
Earl, we're going to stand up for you today. You know, we're getting, our phones are blowing up. Make Earl pay.
Yeah.
But you know what? We love you. We got your back. Today. Just don't make a habit of this being late nonsense, all right? This is your free pass.
But we're doing great. So, a couple other things we want to hit on real quick before we start wrapping it up here is your body language and your voice, your tone of voice.
I'm glad you're getting into this.
I'm getting into it.
This is like these are things I use every day, what you're about to say.
Yeah. So when you can get a lot of feedback without them saying a word.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, and honestly, you can look it up on YouTube. There's a million videos on body language, facial expressions.
Mm-hmm.
You got to watch the eyes, the mouth, the hands. The eyes are a good clue. But yeah, you have to be aware of those, because if you're just talking and not paying attention to those, you're missing out on a lot of valuable information.
Around 50% of our communication to another person comes through our body language, right? If Joe talked about sitting down and being on their level early in the show, as opposed to being up in their face, right? Making them cower. Like, that's not helpful. Tone of voice is another, like the intensity I'm talking to you with and how loud my voice is. Those things override the actual words you have to say if you're not careful, because it's just so intense when somebody is cowering over you or towering over you and going off. It's like, whoa, that message is not going to be easily or warmly received. So we have to be aware of those things for sure, and able to, like, what you want to do is structure an environment that's conducive to this conversation. And the biggest part of that environment is going to be you.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. So yeah, behavioral interpretation. When you're, just as Tim says, when you're over there screaming and looking down on them, they're probably not hearing a word you're saying, right? They're either like, okay, am I going to get smacked upside the head? And if
they're hearing it, it's human nature to be like, I'll show you.
Yeah.
You're not going to tell me what to do. I'm 16 years old.
16?
You got a lot of nerve.
You on top of the world.
Yeah. I'm going to be an adult one day.
So don't you be Snoop Doggy Dogging in my room no more.
Yeah.
Right.
So you just, you can
wow.
do things that beg defiance.
See, Lynn, there you go. That's exactly what we're talking about.
Your kids are very short.
Yeah.
Lynn, I think.
Yep, they're very short.
I have to lay down on the ground to look eye to eye with mine because I'm tall.
Yep.
Patience.
Yeah. Yes, that's key.
Really?
But that's a whole approach thing. Like,
I guess she's right.
Yeah. There's times where, like, say questioning the report card, and then 2 minutes later starting this conversation would not be a good idea.
Probably not.
So you may want to wrap that in, because if you already have to address the report card and this, you can assume that this problem caused the report card.
Yeah, that precedes.
Yeah.
And this goes back to, again, something you said earlier.
Evidence.
Realistic expectations is what I was going to say, right? So you have to be patient. Your expectations have to be that this is going to be a process now. This is something that has changed our lives. It's not going to go away overnight.
Right, and sometimes you have to take your time in this approach. That is key. You can't overreact because you didn't sit down and communicate with your other half or get counseling. It takes literally probably 20 minutes to pick up the phone, call the hotline, and say, "This is what's going on. What do you recommend?" Right?
Sure.
You're going to get some valuable information out of that, right? Yeah, the blah 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 effect, Deborah. That's for sure. Kids like to do that, like roll their eyes and all that.
Yeah.
And that's the thing you have to look past when you're trying to have conversation. You don't want to approach it in that scenario because you already know you got attitude.
Wah, wah, wah,
Yep,
wah,
yep,
wah.
yep, yep.
Like Charlie Brown sitting in
Charlie
class.
Brown.
Wah, 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 wah.
Look at Tim. Very
Yes.
cool.
Well, as a reply.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, some kids grow up faster than they need, and that's sad. And
That's what I was replying to.
okay, so then we're gonna do
Very
it.
sad.
Very.
Yeah, in our
Okay.
world today, it's because being a kid, man, that's the best, right? Just like actually being a kid, riding bikes, playing with your friends, not having the stresses of adulthood, maturing at a slow, appropriate rate, like that. That's great. That's the best stuff. When our children are like thrust into adulthood too soon, they lose so much, and yeah, it is a sad thing.
Yeah, and Earl says he went the friend way. 3 boys, 1 likes to drink. That I don't know if that necessarily defines why one would like to drink, but you really have to just find that fine line. Like, I could be your friend all day long, but if you got a problem and you're not willing to listen to me, I'll whoop your ass too, right? Friend
So
or
I've
parent
heard.
or whatever. If I care about you, then I'm gonna friend or not, right? Friend, parent, whatever. Hopefully they start the conversation. That's kind of like probably the more rare case,
I did.
but it can happen.
I did.
See, Tim over here did. I'm gonna take her comment off so we can see Tim's face when he says "I did."
I did.
Just look at that.
It was me.
It was you.
I told I put a note on my door, on my bedroom door that said, I have a problem with Vicodin, and just waited, just sat in there like waiting for the volcanic eruption.
Really?
What's this?
What did Snoop Dogg say?
Snoop Dogg flipped out because Snoop Dogg, had grown up with a father who was struggling with alcoholism for most of her childhood, and a
Okay,
brother.
so she had eyes on you, like already. Probably.
She did, and yet at the same time, frankly, I feel like she kind of had a sheltered life in a way. She was
Mhm.
married at 19, and my dad were off to the suburbs, and so she never really went through this crazy college experimental phase.
Yeah.
She was always like a good girl, so it was very jarring for her, and I don't know if she had the healthiest respect for what addiction really was. She was worried, and she kind of flipped out. And I don't think she realized how prevalent it was going to become. That I wasn't a demon out there in the streets. It was the beginning of something that was going to start happening way more often.
Right. So ultimately, you are, that's a whole different scenario there, Deborah, when the parent is struggling with any type of addiction. The kids have a rough life,
Yeah.
and we all know that one. So just keep in mind, you want to start a conversation, not a confrontation.
Agreed.
Agreed. You don't have to prove you're right. Just know you're right. Right.
Agreed.
Okay. I love this. He's
I'm just
agreeing
gonna
with
keep
me
agreeing.
the first time all day. Yeah. So just make sure that you're aware of all that stuff. And it takes a lot of self-control to get that, because kids are going to say some stuff they're honestly going to piss you off. Right. And you have to focus on the ultimate goal. And the ultimate goal is not to have a pissing match and an argument and walk 2 separate ways.
No, it's to address the problem.
Yeah.
And this problem precedes all other problems, right? I'm from experience, going to be able to get a job and support myself and have healthy relationships and move forward in life and be stable, any of these things when I'm struggling with addiction. So being late on the cable bill comparatively doesn't matter. Getting poor grades in school actually comparatively doesn't matter. We need to address the substance use disorder first, and then those other problems will start to come into focus, and we can work on those.
Right. Conversation starter, usually more so with female master manipulators.
They'll be the conversation.
Hey,
Am I
bring it
a
on.
female master manipulator? Is that?
Bring it on.
Yeah.
Bring it on. Okay, so. Oh, hey, Vanessa. We're
That's
talking
awesome.
about that friend-parent approach when you guys,
Are you guys
occasionally
friends?
had your, we're friends.
That's nice.
Yeah.
That's good. I'm glad you're friends with your dad.
Right.
Because
But you always want to establish that that relationship where you have that gray line where there's a parent, you're a parent, but you're also a friend. They need to be able to trust you. They need to be able to open up when there is a problem, and you need to understand that their first response is going to be lie. Like they're going to deny it.
Like a rug.
Yes, like a rug.
Lie like a rug.
And that's a natural thing. I don't think there's too many.
And that's fear. That's fear-based, right? That's not about they don't respect you, they don't love you, blah, blah, blah. So much of being an addict is fear-based. And so
Yes.
those lies are fear-based lies. And once you can kind of break that wall down, you can obtain more honesty. If they're struggling in active addiction, you're not going to get honesty all the time. But you can start to get some, and you can start to work together to make sense of what's happening.
Exactly.
It's a process, though.
Yep. And I love this comment from Lisa. If we have more than one child, it's important to have the siblings involved. It's a balance of support for them. Addiction is a family disease.
Addiction is a family disease.
And I believe that is a valid point. But I also would like to add to that, like the entire family, at least the closer ones, immediate family that you deal with a lot. I think they need to also know, because we don't want to hide that, right? Because hiding it is almost enabling, right? Because there's no accountability. There's nobody to they feel like they have to prove to themselves, and then all it takes is one negative thing, and then they're like, I'm worthless because I couldn't do this or couldn't do that, right?
Yeah.
And then they'll revert back to that as a way out. But if they know that there's people rooting for them and support system in there, and they can, when someone says, "How are you doing?" they don't have to lie. They can say, "I'm struggling."
Right.
Right.
And I try to do that, man. I try to do that with maybe some people even watching. There are people in my life who I know are kind of going back and forth, struggling with it. And I'm saying to them, you don't have to lie to me. I'm not going to judge you. I don't I just want to help you. And I can't help you if you don't tell me the truth, but there's no,
and it's got to be part of
you're not going to shock me.
Right. And it's part of the process.
It's part of the process, right? You have to, they say in NA for sure that honesty is the antidote to our diseased thinking. So that's what I'm trying to get people to do. Just open up, be honest, tell the truth, tell on yourself, as they say. Find the right places to do it, whether those be 12-step meeting or you're with a friend or whatever. And I'm trying to be that friend in some of these instances, but you got to do it. You have to do it if you really want to move forward.
Yes, we have to support each other, and that's like that whole family disease. I'm going to put Lisa's comment back up there because I think that was one of the most valuable ones as far as after the approach. It's if you keep it a secret, it's enabling. It's if it's out there with trusted people in the family, I don't feel that that's an embarrassment. I feel that that's motivational. It's going to help.
Yeah. It doesn't need to be a deep, dark secret. There's no reason for it to be. We're all human beings. We all have different problems, and we need to learn to help each other and be receptive to other people and their problems. We always want everybody at their best, right? If you're not at your best, if you're cranky, if you're going through something then, you're the bad guy. No, you're just a human being, right? People have problems, and we need to take people in their entirety, not pick and choose and only embrace them when they're on top of the world, but learn to have legitimate relationships, and those are going to consist of ups and downs and challenges.
Yeah, and that's one of the things when someone's struggling, that's when they usually go to that route to using alcohol or drugs because they don't know how to cope with it. They don't know how to get help. There may be a mental illness involved, and when you have the more people you have checking on them, right? Like, hey, Tim, how you doing today? How was school? It's something simple as that, but more people doing it.
I didn't go today.
Yeah, I figured that.
Damn it.
I figured. That's why I called you out.
I didn't go today. I forgot.
That was called the Jedi mind trick.
Yeah.
He fell for it.
Where do I go?
I don't know.
I don't know. Remember what school I go to.
So, yeah, I want one thing. There was a phrase that I wanted to throw out there as far as creating those rules, consequences. And we talked about you have to be sure, 1,000% sure that you can carry those out. One of my favorite lines is consistency creates expectations. Okay. And that carries over. If there's a problem and it's solved with being consistent with rules and consequences, that carries over into the child. So, okay, yeah, they went down the wrong road, but they got back on track and they learned from it. Okay, then they can evolve into people that are going to appreciate that whole structure that they were just given. Honestly, honesty is the best policy. Because when you weren't honest, yeah, that's for sure. But unfortunately, many people aren't honest, and Tim's the exception. I know Katrina's daughter was the exception, but more times than not, they're not going to be honest about it up front. Yep.
And I wasn't always honest.
Not always.
I brought the conversation up, but
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying. Like, we're going to go through ups and downs with people. People are going to be doing well one moment and struggling the next.
Mhm.
That's just the nature of this disease and mental illness, all that. So you never cross a finish line.
Right.
Hopefully you grow.
So hang on, we got Lori here. I didn't know you like the Facebook page, and you'll see it. You'll get a notification, Lori. So just kind of wrap it up and summarize everything. Look for those red flags. Grade slipping, coming home late at night, sneaking around, maybe smell on the clothes. And if you have all that stuff and you're pretty convinced there's a problem, then you're going to need some evidence. You're going to need some hard evidence. If you can get that, you're ahead of the game. Then you need to work on your feelings. You got to kind of, tuck those away so you're not angry, disappointed, and showing that emotional roller coaster when you approach your child. What else we got? We got the approach. We got the communication between the other half, which we said before, the other half could mean anybody. It doesn't have to be a spouse or a boyfriend or a fiance or whatever you want to call it. It could be a grandparent.
I would say remember that you really can't help anybody unless you're helping yourself, right? Like you got to take care of yourself first. So this can be really a devastating thing to learn that your child has a problem. So remember, you'll be no good to them. You will not help them. At least you will not be as effective in doing so if you're not taking steps to care for yourself. Don't forget that. That's going to be a crucial component to helping the whole family disease to progress in a positive way.
So make sure you have your approach nailed down. And I think one of the more important things after that approach is, we talked about it multiple times today, which would be those rules and consequences. Very important that you are sure you can carry those out, because if not, you're weak and you're going to end up, it's an opportunity for them. Yeah, so that's a good one. Messed up with the boys, but the girls have made them have a 10-minute conversation. That's a kind of a genius idea. And the conversation doesn't really have to necessarily be about anything negative or any kind of snooping around, right? Snoop Doggy Dog.
Yeah.
It could just be a normal conversation where those red flags will arise automatically.
Yeah.
Slurring in the speech, the pupils, the eyes, smell on the clothes, all that stuff you're going to pick up just by having a small conversation with them.
That's all it takes.
That's all it takes. So, yeah, once you have that evidence, now, of course, the actual approach to the discussing that, remember, they're going to throw back some criticism your way. It's a natural human instinct, especially with those hormones flying around. At 16, both Tim and I knew we were on top of the world. We both wore capes, if you didn't know that.
Yeah, well, I still wear a cape. I don't know what the relevance
is. He wears a cape at his house, and his neighbor told me that it's not pretty. But
it's his opinion.
Yeah, his opinion. I don't know. So, yeah, then you have that evidence. Make sure you're prepared for the criticism.
And such princess on it. I like it.
Princess?
Go ahead.
So, yeah. Then it's a matter of carrying that out. And we had that drug test question earlier. and you kind of answered it in your situation. You would definitely want them tested at home.
I wouldn't hesitate.
I think it was. You said it was situational for the most part. I believe that, but I also believe what you know is what you know, right?
Yeah, I think at some point it'll become obvious that, like, okay, it's in the open. They're struggling with addiction. We both know it. They were doing good for 4 or 5 days. Now they look like they're using. It seems to me that the time is now to get the evidence again that says, you fell off. And, like, I'm not here to judge you for that, but I need to know that because that's going to inform what I do.
Problem
Yeah.
solving,
So, like, and when they don't want to take that test, what does that say to you? Sometimes all you have to do is ask them to. Yeah, I would say
if they don't want to take the test,
it's probably
a red
like
flag.
a red flag.
A red flag.
Probably how I would describe it. Yeah.
So that testing is not a bad idea, but hold them, like, put them in charge of that. Make them take the ownership in that test, because real quickly they'll learn that that's an accomplishment. That's a proud feeling. Like, they don't have to worry about it. They can be like, look.
It does feel good. Like, that's one of the benefits, one of the only benefits maybe of having to go test 2 and 3 times a week is that people know that. Like, there's evidence.
There's no doubt.
Yeah, there's evidence.
It's either yes or no.
I'm being proven
right.
to be clean, and so.
So as part of that is that drug test, the drug test question. Situational, but I would definitely like build that into my plan of attack and my rules and consequences.
I would, but you just got to be like, basically, like, if I have reason to believe you're using, I'm going to ask you to test. You shouldn't have a problem with that. If you do have a problem with that, that's a concern, right? So all I'm asking you to do is prove to me you're doing the right thing. And the more you prove to me you're doing the right thing, the less proof will even be something that enters into our conversations, right? For now, I need to see it, but I need to see it now so that one day it won't be necessary.
Right. So we're going to wrap it up on that note.
With what?
Red flags.
Red flags.
Red flags all over.
We should wrap the camera in a red flag.
Red
since
flags.
I left my cape at home.
Red flags.
My bedazzled pink.
So watch for them.
Princess.
Make sure you are paying attention. I think one of the other valuable comments was have that when they come home, have that short conversation. That would give you so much to go on.
Yeah.
Don't
let them beeline to their bedroom.
Right. Because that just eliminates all possibilities of you
and if they
catching anything.
beeline to the refrigerator, then their bedroom, probably a red flag.
Probably a red
They
flag.
don't want to talk to you. They don't want to do anything. They're going to grab something to eat as quickly as possible and go hide in their bedroom.
Yep.
Red flag.
And again, don't forget, if you are in that situation, there are plenty of counseling hotlines. There's probably local counseling. You can get all kinds of support before you even approach this to make sure that you are confident in it. Because sometimes all it takes is for someone to say, I agree with you on your opinion on how to approach this. What did you miss? Did you leave us and come
You
back?
missed a hour-long live stream, I guess.
Hey, Nicole.
Hi, Nicole.
So, yeah, we're going to wrap it up on that one. We want to thank everybody for coming in. Obviously, when we're done here, this video posts back on the Facebook page, and we'd appreciate it if you share it out so someone that maybe needs to hear it can hear it. I know there's a lot of parents that are dealing with that, and maybe you or us.
And a lot of them are going to be dealing with it as this whole situation, epidemics and stuff kind of returns to normal and people start flooding back out into the world. I think we're going to see a spike in AA membership, for example.
Right. I agree with you 100%. They're planning for it, so that tells you something.
Get ready.
Right. So, yeah, get that video shared out there. If you haven't liked the Facebook page like Lori, like the Facebook page. You'll automatically get notifications when we go live.
Yes, sir.
You'll know. Yep. And we'd appreciate it if you share those. We post a post on there from our software here that's shareable. And if you like that and put notify me, it will automatically pop into the Facebook Live when we go live. So, Lori, that was for you. Take some notes and hit the like button. So thanks for tuning in.
Thanks for tuning in.
We'll catch you next time.
Yeah,
Yeah,
next time.
next time. There goes the red flag.
We're wrapping it up.